Blessed love and welcome to the African Liberation Network. I am your host, Ja Daniel. And this occasion, we have a very special guest. Our guest has been the visual artist one of the visual artists who has been chosen to do artwork, which has been featured on album covers for a very favorite group of mine, Midnite, Akae Beka. And now he is in an organization called RUNN, which is Reform the United Nations Now. And we would like to feature his work and his mission tonight on this episode. So give thanks for tuning in. Welcome. And we would like everyone to welcome Honorable Ras Elijah Tafari. Blessed love, brethren.
All to love, my Lord. All glory to the Almighty King of Kings. Blessed brother, Rastafari. Hail the Most High. First and foremost, we give thanks for his presence in our lives and unit and bringing us together in unity. You know, African Liberation Network, three very powerful words. You know, so together in that Holy Trinity we stand. We give thanks and praises for all the Rastafari elders who came before us, for His Majesty, for Empress Menen, and for all freedom fighters. So we give thanks, my Lord. Jah bless the eye.
Blessed love, King. Yes, sir.
Bless the eye. Jah, Rastafari. Well, give thanks for having. Yeah.
True, King. Yes, I give thanks for joining us, for sure. At this moment, I would like to open the floor to the eye to just kind of give an introduction of yourself and even, you know, a few words about your mission with the RUNN Reform the United Nations Now organization and initiative, and just kind of introduce, you know, what you want the people to know about Ras Elijah Tafari at this time. Give thanks, King.
Give thanks and praise. And I know these things they're important and they're necessary because you need to know, you know, the person behind the movement. You know, it's always important to even have an eye to eye. So, you know, eye to eye. I would like to say more than anything, I'm a servant of His Majesty. And I've been in this movement for a minute. I care deeply about Earth. I care deeply about the way that the planet is moving, in the way that humanity doesn't seem to listen. I have been honored to be, you know, a student of many. And it's important to stand on your own 2 feet. It's important to speak your own mind. It's important to speak and teach in your own words, but never forget what your elders have taught, as well as especially His Majesty. So, you know, I come, you know, out of Africa, out of Egypt, and I've been in the West for a good minute, and I've gone back and forth, and I've seen a good amount of this planet, and I realize how much we have become a globalistic society. I understand how much multilateral decisions matter. That means when we make decisions together, you know, that too many nations are under the yoke of their colonial predecessors, or the United States or China or Russia. You know, it's just something that, you know, when I see freedom, I see all of us together. And I am a fine artist. That's what I've been doing for a long time, is being a painter. And, you know, Vaughn would always call the artwork joy things or joy ting instead of a painting. And it's because the meditation is a prayer and the prayer is a joy. And that's what I want people to feel through the colors and the vision. And, you know, what we're trying to do here is almost like trying to create the most incredible mural. And we're doing it without knowing exactly how, but being listening to the spirit and having a awareness of not to repeat things that don't work. So there's a frequency of making sure that we listen to our elders, that we also see who is organized, who is ready, and how to deal with each other in a way that isn't with bias and scorn, that there isn't petty prejudice, that we can get rid of some of the pain and resentment of the past so that we can have a future. So, you know, it's one of them frequencies where I give thanks. Talking about, you know, talking about myself is kind of a waste of time, but yet it's important. You know, I understand, you know. So I live in New Mexico. I have 7 children, a wonderful wife, her family is also Rastafari, so I have elders around, and I also know that I want my children to have a good example. And this means that we have to look at things internationally, nationally, and locally, and realize what solutions work at what levels and what we can do with what we have. So with that, reform the United Nations now. This is a very, very serious thing, because we as the Earth are threatened by a number of different subjects, from nuclear weapons to the lack of climate justice, as well as what we can see economically and in terms of this COVID thing, that there's going to be one thing after another, that one nation can't solve these problems. And unless that we all have an equal voice, we will not be heard properly. Collective security cannot be enacted if you have 5 nations that have veto power over whatever the subject is in the UN. What we would like to see is people realize that you must educate yourself first on the United Nations and how it works, and realize that there is a space for peacemaking, and there's a space for people to talk to each other in a manner in which they can be honest, and nations can work out problems without unnecessary violence, that there is a means of communication in which is always open. So the closing of communication is the closing of trust. The nature of looking at what we're focused on primarily is the veto power in the UN Security Council. So what RUNN is fighting for is to remove the veto power from the UN Security Council. Who's on the UN Security Council? China, Russia, the United States, France, and Great Britain. And what we're discussing and reasoning is how to do this from an organic level. And I look forward to getting into that, from Africa to the Caribbean to the United States. Each location has its own strengths and weaknesses. And by working and seeing what needs to be reformed, even inside of ourselves, we can also see where the avenues of strength are around us that are microcosms of this UN. And that includes Ethiopia, that includes the African Union, that all of these things are intricately a part of the bigger picture.
We'll give thanks for that introduction. There's many things that we will touch on that were introduced in that introduction. So, first of all, we'll start with, I would like for the eye to give us a testimony, if you will, about how you and your artwork became chosen to be featured on Midnite, Akae Beka's album covers, and even explain or tell us about how it was like working with Vaughn, Benjamin, or even the Benjamins and the band in general, and Akae Beka and that whole transition. Just any kind of things you want to include that kind of highlight your relationship with the band.
I like how you said the band, because Vaughn cared deeply about the band, that it was something to realize that no man here by himself, really. The Vaughn was, the pillar that held up the building. He was always there trying to uplift all and respect all. He had it's a deep thing, when someone's a close friend, and you want to say first and foremost to those who love him, that love is God, so love don't die. Love is real. There's a certain level of Rastafari. I deal with Rastafari subjects in a Rastafari way. So the nature of even looking at things in a past tense, Most High makes it so that everything happens in his way, not our way. So, how did it happen? Rastafari said so. When did it happen, and the pretenses around that? This was a unique experience. If you listen to the song Current, there's a song, or the album Current, there's a song called Vibes. And on that song Vibes In, it's basically talking about what it was like just being around us, because here in New Mexico, we didn't want to see a show. We wanted to meet the man and just reason. So when we asked him to come out here, there was with no expectations. There was no pretense. It was just, we want to get to know you, because what you're saying is prolific. We see you, we hear you, and we feel you. And And it started from there. You know, there wasn't an expectation in any manner other than just please let us sit with you. And you know, I would say that you've got a lot of different ones, you know, in and outside of the band. You know, a lot of us, when we felt that type of power and leadership and joy and drive, you know, it was a serious force. And likewise, you know, being around ones like Lee Grand is a joy. To be around ones like Ras El, you know, there's no one like him. You know, there's also Peter, who came in later on, wonderful, you know, and he brought, like, we start really developing as a family, you know. So there's a certain frequency, you know, where ones have to remember that there's just so many ones that have made up this band. And I hope over the years that we all come together more, communicate, and see what we can do, you know, in every way to help people, because I don't think any of us got into this trying to make money, frankly. Like, music industry ain't the best industry you want to make money in. And it's the same thing with reggae on top of that. So there's a level where I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of work put in by people who just love, and that they pour it into the cause because they know it's going to help people. We know that our children will grow up listening to this and sharing it with their friends, that we are creating the soundtrack for our future. And I'm very, very, honestly, like words can't even get close to trying to describe this experience. You know, it's one of those things where Vaughn don't like the word no, you know? So it's a certain thing where when Vaughn wants something to happen, it needs to happen. And if you can't do the job, somebody else will. So the nature and the importance of getting work done and reaching out and working with people, getting over things, communicating, there's so many levels. How do you flip the script? How do you do what Vaughn does and show so much love that, you know, ones correct themselves, you know? So there's a certain level of realizing, how do you teach people to think about the way they think, you know? And this is something that Vaughn did all the time, you know? And it could have been the simplest thing, you know, it's saying, oh, let me hear that skank. And he'd be like, skank? You know, like, there's all kind of different things where, like, you know, the simplest word can make you rethink everything. You know, it's one of those things where he would talk about how economy is it's supposed to be it's an echo, you know, just like an ecosystem. No matter what system it is, it echoes, and it's in the word. It's an ecosystem. So when you see economy, it should echo. It should go around, you know, but more or less what we're seeing is a economy, not an economy, you know. And when I heard economy, I just couldn't stop laughing because straight up, that's what it feels like, you know. So we need to try and look at things in a way in which, you know, the spirit and the flesh, you know, are aligned, that it's mind and matter in balance, you know. And I always feel like we're never done learning, you know. Every day people are trying to translate tribe lyrics, and you know, that's its own reasoning, you know, trying to sometimes decipher and see, you know, even based on personal experiences or what the man say, it's something that, you know, there's room for all of us to learn a lot, you know, and that includes the books he was reading, the codes it goes on and on. There's no human being on earth that is anything like Vaughn. It's like being around Moses. I mean, you know, like, this is, and when his absence left a feeling in which now the Israelites have to learn to cook, get up and do things and do, you know, carry their own, keep walking to the promised land. So there's a lot of frequencies where, you know, on a spiritual level, it's always interesting talking, you know, about, you know, Rastafari, and also trying to talk about the situation in the world and RUNN. And the joy of this is that we don't have to separate it, because as Rastafari, we Rastafari to the core and to the bone. It's a way of life. It's beyond theology. That our liberation is interlinked to the liberations of others. And what Vaughn showed was this commitment to the people. And that commitment is something that is biblical. It's powerful. It's on a level where, you know, it reminds me of the two olive branches mentioned in the book of Revelation, you know, and those two olive branches remind me of Bob Marley and Von Benjamin. And there's a level of watching, you know, how we saw the book of Enoch open up, more people reading it than ever. And this is one of the very, very serious and powerful books, and also distinctly Ethiopian. The nature of bringing the mystical into that, which is so ancient, that the book of Enoch is a portal, and it's a portal in which only those of faith can go through. So it's something that either you believe or you don't believe. But once you believe, you realize there's so much that you don't know that you have to accept. That is humbling, and now you're walking into the inner caves of Christianity, the inner caves of everything from whether you want to call them fallen angels or different types of hidden demons. I mean, this is like the Matrix movie or some sort of incredible a story full of characters that are out of something out of this world, because it is. You know, we've been stuck in a mind state of thinking what we see is the only thing that's real, and everything that you see came from the unseen. And so the unseen contains a lot more than we realize and that we give credit to. And this is why there's angels and there's demons, and then there's all these other powers that are at work. And you know, Vaughn was is you know, by choosing the name Akae Beka, he's sharing you that his oath and love of God is everlasting. So there is no past, present, or future when it's everlasting. Everlasting is timeless. So at this moment and in this time, you know, he has shown absolute oneness here and there and now everywhere. So it's a certain frequency of humility, you know, and I send my love to all those who loved him. And, you know, just ask that we keep sharing and showing that same love and respect the way he did things, and think about, you know, how to do things with his majesty first. And, you know, don't be afraid to correct. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and please be ready to listen. Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
Ras Tafari. Give thanks, King. Yes, that was a good synopsis, I guess you could say. So with that being said, now let's roll right into the organization RUNN, Reform the United Nations Now. You gave us a brief introduction, but I would like for you to go in further detail about what is the initiative, what are you trying to do, and what outcome are you looking to get, and how, and, you know, the who, what, when, why, and how kind of RUNN. Please give thanks.
Give thanks and praise. This is an organization that is non-theological and non-political, which means that we're here to gather and unite with as many people that actually are willing to use their time to create pressure or at least educate others. The nature of having consensus is how we get paid. So unity is our power. We've already been able to establish ourselves in 4 different countries, and this is an organic love snowball. That the nature of what we're looking at is the root of a lot of problems. So from Syria, Yemen, Israel, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, most of the world is against these invasions. Most of the world are against these occupations, just like they were against apartheid. And if we look at the scenario, it was up to the people to put pressure, as well as corporations, to put pressure on the governments to get rid of apartheid. It wasn't on the ground movement as much as it was the entire world also putting the threats and the action of boycott, divest, and sanction. So that was one thing that the world did together that was able to have an effect, but that wasn't because of the UN. The nature of what we're looking at is what His Majesty called the Supreme Challenge, which is that we don't have a mature United Nations. We don't have a reinvigorated United Nations. So it's you know, it started with 55 nations, with 5 nations being the Security Council. It is now 194 nations officially with 5 Security Council members. The nature of looking at this, as far as that this is a house that His Majesty founded, and that this is a place in which rational, logical, democratic ideas should prevail. We know they're not, and we need to figure out how to put pressure on in the right places. So as an organization, we were reasoning today with another organization about how we don't want money from our members. We don't want confusion at all about our duty here and our work. And that is that as a nonprofit, we are not trying to sell anything in order so that we can stay afloat. That this is a matter of organizing with those who are leaders. It means that we have to make the links with human rights organizations and environmental organizations, but also those who are in government that already believe this stuff. Like when it comes down to it, it's like UN reforms are not a new idea. Kofi Annan wrote a book about it. It was mentioned last week in the first UN Security Council meeting. And we've got some really amazing people from Estonia to Germany to my favorite, Ralph Gonzalez, Gonzalez in St. Vincent and the Grenadine Islands. This man has he's the prime minister, and he was raised by Rastafari. And he has an immense amount of poetry and care, but he also is very fierce when it comes down to UN Security Council reforms. And so there's a certain level of seeing that there are ones in very diverse places. And we've seen it with universities as well that have reached out to us, and we've reached out to, that understand that this is what all things go underneath. This is the supreme umbrella, and that this is the basis of how the world will get collective security. So looking at different movements and how that they've gone about doing what they're doing, we're studying them as well. And what we're trying to do is creating as many alliances with other movements and creating different networks of ways of getting into the right places with leaders. That we understand that it's going to take a lot of people putting pressure together. What we would like to see inevitably will be countries pressuring other countries to stand with them, to find a creative manner, because it's very interesting looking at the legal framework of this. And we have international lawyers that are looking at this, and we've also studied the charter and looking at it. And it's basically in Article 108 and 109 where there's a catch-22. And it was very interesting because recently we also saw the present General Secretary speak, Antonio Gutierrez, explaining that the UN's charter has got serious issues in actually trying to protect itself in order to do its work. And that there are those who are in the UN with incredible power that don't respect the principles of this charter. And it's something where I feel that together we can make a calculated and careful steps at educating ones first about how the UN operates and the way that we all can create the desire for ones to have to answer why. Why is it that 5 countries refuse to share the floor democratically with all the rest of the nations? And also how the African Union can organize together so that their 54 votes can actually serve in a power where they have more than a quarter of the members in the UN. The fear is of Africa's rising. The fear is of the majority of the world actually having collective security. And the nature of advancement and globalism and internationalism and international relations is going to depend on a equal playing field and a dignified and respectful approach to the future of humanity. So I think that we've got several things going in the right direction. And one of those is being, never has been so many nations been pro getting rid of nuclear weapons. the climate changing has got people looking at how to do things differently. I think that the cause of African empowerment is more in the view now than ever. And so having these things on our side allows and makes the subject, and the UN has made this subject the subject of the last decade. And it's, you know, about Africans having the ability to get out and push into a new direction, and to have a time period of us becoming equal, you know. And this is something that, again, no one can give us our freedom. You know, we have to get free ourselves. No one can give us our rights. So looking at the future, you know, it's up to Africa to say and reclaim her resources and her voting power in the world, and realize that this is what they have over China. This is what they have as in their favor. This is what makes it so that these countries, if they're wise, will realize that this is a power they don't need, and it makes them look bad. England and France are already there. They don't support the UN Security Council veto power, and really would like to see it limited only for non-violent disputes, but certainly not when war is the subject. And I appreciate the mature approach, but it's going to take ones in each one of these nations to communicate with their government and build a relationship, to have a network amongst themselves in which they can figure out how to make this a platform issue, where politicians who want to run in elections have to answer, do you or do you not support the veto powers of the UN Security Council?
Give thanks. Yes, I. So there was a letter that you had recently wrote that was brought to our attention, which is, you know, what brings us here to this place, reasoning today. You know, I would like for the eye to even read that letter and share it with the viewers, listeners that are with us right now, and kind of give some insight into your current, you know, state of affairs with RUNN.
Thank you. This is a very interesting moment, and I can't stress it enough that Ethiopia is in a very difficult time, and we don't have a desire to point fingers. We have a desire to find solutions. We have spoken to a number of people and organizations about what's going on currently in Ethiopia, as well as what will be a long-term solution. And our desire to see the best for Ethiopia is rooted to see the best for ourselves, for our holy land, for our history, and also for our future. So I hope this letter reaches, and we plan on releasing it shortly. We have collected some endorsements, and we are looking for more. And we currently have Prince Asarat reviewing the letter, and has already given us suggestions about what further we could add in the future, especially determining after seeing what's going to happen on Monday with the Ethiopian elections. So without further ado, on behalf of RUNN, we have written a letter that will be public, and is to the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, and President Sahle-Work Zewde. Tenestelen and greetings. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, President Sahle-Work Zewde of Ethiopia. It is the duty of peace-loving people and a matter of conscience that we mention the importance of Ethiopia and her future. We all are aware of the recent internal conflicts that have arisen in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, resulting in millions of refugees, many of whom have sought safety in Sudan. We have reasoned as RUNN Reform the United Nations Now about the ongoing escalation and the possible means of resolution. We have hope for Ethiopia and pray for her leaders. We feel it is most important to understand that one of the long-term effects of ethnic federalism has been more severe tribal divisions, which have, in effect, weakened Ethiopia, and that a new approach by the government is necessary. The evidence of total social breakdown is apparent in Aksum, Tigray, where local people are under attack by multiple armed groups and forces. Being that this is the home of the Ark of the Covenant, it is the duty of all peace-loving people and those who consider the Ark of the Covenant holy to protect the sacred city and all Ethiopians from foreign and domestic attacks. Aksum carries an exceptional cultural history that is globally recognized by both historians and pilgrims. It is noted that there are many parties involved in the ongoing internal issues, and we are suggesting that Ethiopia ask for assistance from the African Union in securing its borders, in arbitrating between conflicting parties, and protecting her people non-partially. The same confidence Ethiopia has had in the importance of the OAU needs to be demonstrated today by allowing Africans to help repay their appreciation through collective security and the deployment of peacekeeping forces. We would like to encourage Ethiopia to ask for help, as they have persuaded others to do, in order that African problems have African solutions. Ethiopia is too important to the world and for African unity to be in a state of disintegration. It is the capital of Africans, globally and continentally, by the presence of the African Unity headquarters in Addis Ababa. We as Africans need Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and President Saleh Work to show the wisdom to ask for help and for proper investigations into all allegations of human rights violations. We are also asking that the United Nations be given safe passage and assistance in reaching any areas that are in need of assistance. Solidarity in this time can prevent war and potential famine. We pray that Exeabia, the Almighty Creator, grant us the courage to do what is right for Ethiopia. In our honor for her as Mother of Zion, let love and faith be the shield and armor. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Matthew 5:9. In the name of the Trinity, one God. Signed, RUNN, Reform the United Nations Now, the Rastafari Coalition, and the House of Emmanuel, UK. Give thanks and praise.
Yes, I.
This letter is really a start, and we also realize that there are many subjects that are delicate within it, and that includes the African Union, and whether or not they are doing and can be used for the agenda of Europe. It is very important that we walk softly and delicately and not make assumptions and deal with what we have, and also look at the options of what happens if we do nothing. We just saw a letter come out yesterday from His Imperial Highness Prince Haile Selassie I, and this letter spoke of how he is working with those in the spiritual and the religious community all over the world. There is, I think, a lot going on, whether it be prayers or concern, or those who want to express that they see the pain of Ethiopia, of Ethiopians at large, and also would like to address the bigger problem of federalism. This is another subject, but at the end of it, or at the heart of it, is this plan that Ethiopia would divide itself and that it would be a tribal country, and that it's going exactly to plan. And unless we look at the importance of revising the constitution, as well as external influence in Ethiopia, it will be very difficult to have a permanent solution. But for the right now, I think that it would be something in Abiy Ahmed's interest, as well as President Saleh Work to ask for help, because in many ways, a third party is one that can clear up the issues of, it's like there's a media war. I don't know if people realize this. I'm trying to speak very carefully, but there is a media war where everyone has got an agenda. That when you are damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't, you're in a corner. And Abiy Ahmed is in a situation in which sharing the ability to bring peace means that it will allow a third party to be able to take the blame, because no matter what he does, he's going to be blamed and accused of all kinds of stuff. Trying to find accurate information is incredibly difficult. And that's because of the legacy of Ethiopian ethnic federalism. Why are we doing this? What is its relationship to the UN? Well, other than being a matter of conscience, its relationship is, again, if the African Union cannot hold it together and make sure that Ethiopia is a example and that they can work with Ethiopia, then the nature of looking at the home of African unity, the root of the dream that we as Africans can solve our own problems together, which is something that Ethiopia has said, particularly in the dam subject. This must be shown by sharing faith in your brothers, that they care about peace. And I think that this is a very complicated subject in which, by not falling into past prejudices, we'll be able to have a more healthier reasoning, because generalizing in Ethiopia is very, very dangerous. Now we are looking at a very, it's incredibly beautiful. Like whenever I start thinking about it, even the feudal systems that have been repaired, the history of these places, when I think about the names, you know, the nature of, let me share something. This might help. When I was reasoning with Prince Asarat, he said to I, do you not think that when the Organization of African Unity, the Organization of African Unity was created, that they did not take in account the borders that were created by Europeans in the Paris Agreement? Like, do you not think that these artificial borders were not a subject in which we looked at as being one that we chose not to address? I always wondered why these borders were kept. And what I realized is that His Majesty and many others had the view and the dream of African unity, that the large sizes of these countries that were carved out at the Berlin conference, that this was to the advantage of building African unity if we used it so. If we realize that this is already incorporating so much land, that if Africa can create national unity, they can create African unity. Because within most of these African countries, there's a huge diverse numbers of languages and tribes. And that creating national unity makes it so that there is less bureaucracy, that there is less division, that there is more room for people from other backgrounds to live where they were living and work where they want to work, where there is not arbitrary prejudice. And we can see this when people start putting up ethnic lines, even artificially, as we saw in Rwanda, where we can see the Hutus and the Tutsis are genetically exactly the same. The nature of how many people in Ethiopia have many tribes in them. And now you're asking them to choose a tribe. That ethnic federalism encourages groups of tribes to separate. The nature of this is a very clever motion in which you can see liberal governments in some ways also attempting to use a similar strategy. It's one where you think you're being empowered to be independent, to be sovereign, to be free. But what they're really trying to do is make you weak and use divide and rule tactics in order to take you down. So if we study the way that ethnic federalism is working in Ethiopia to apartheid in South Africa when it was in place, you will see many similarities. And this is part of the overall problem, is that they say you have the right to be your own people and be sovereign, but if they want to be their own people and sovereign, the government wars with them. The Constitution is working against the government. The United Nations Charter and the way it is working against the United Nations. The African Union, by not standing together, as you know, President Mugabe had pointed out, as well as many others, makes it so that we are permanently discriminated against on the world stage, because we will not be given a permanent seat. So the racism is quite a interesting subject within it, but that is a small subject, because it's really 189 nations that are being discriminated against. So 189 against 5, those are some good odds. And if we can bring together the simplicity that united we are strong, divided we will fall, then we will have a chance at actually making real change in the time that we need to make it. This slow change and the slow will to action, this is part of the problem. And it takes people to put pressure. It takes everyday people to realize you don't have to be in government to be a leader. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's all relevant, you know, so give thanks. Yes, so, you know, in listening, you know, to your analysis of the problem that Ethiopia faces, which is the ethnic federalism, and even the greater problem in Africa, which is the division amongst tribal lines, which we know the colonialists have used as a technique over, you know, the centuries. You know, I would like to ask, do you think that it's in the best interests of the bigger countries in the UN, which, you know, really make the most impact in the decisions that are made by the UN? Do you think it's in their best interest to see the African problem of ethnic federalism, or even just tribalism, solved and a united Africa? Like, is basically what I'm asking, is that outcome something that the UN would actually desire? Would they ever really give themselves to make that a reality?
It's a very, very good question. And I think that there is proxy wars that are going on, and that there is funding coming in from out of Africa, particularly when it comes to the Chinese dam or the Renaissance Dam, which is a very huge topic. When we look at what happened with the Derg and the TPLF coming in, and even the stories of how the TPLF came in, which I've started to sit there and think about, are just a fantastic and fantastical story that doesn't make sense. Nobody in the Derg was held to account, and very little things really changed from the Derg to the TPLF running things for the next 25, 30 years. And the only key thing that did change is that support from Russia diminished and became less. Support of the United States went up. When we look now at the change of what's happened recently, Egypt is a much bigger supporter and puppet of the United States. Ethiopia is now working more with China. I don't think it is coincidental to watch the upheaval and realizing that there is definitely a other alternative, other agenda and being worked on. What does this mean in the bigger picture? This is where I have to get very careful and diplomatic. The United States, as well as China, are not members of the ICC and do not ascribe or allow those within the International Criminal Court to investigate human rights violations. They are some of the biggest they're some of the biggest criminals when it comes down to human rights violations. And I'm not going to take Russia off of the list either. The nature of not being held accountable according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and refusing to even allow investigators from the ICC to come in, but yet expect Africa to be held on trial in the ICC it's not only hypocritical, but it lowers the entire validity of the concept. If we're going to be able to have a future in which tyrants and genocide and mass murder will not be daily activities on the behalf of capitalists, then there needs to be accountability on every level. And it's like, who is powerful enough to do this? Who can hold them to account? Africa has the resources. What they need to do is realize that it's profitable for them to have weak leaders that can be bought off. It's profitable for them to have a system where there is not a proper judiciary systems, So the nature of encouraging both journalism as well as proper representation, freedom of speech, reporting, and legal necessities is a way of legitimizing and showing confidence of their own governments. And we've seen that all over the place. And Ethiopia was and has been an example in this from time to time with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, where he said, let these political prisoners out of jail, where he's allowed a lot of dissent. And the nature is that the more freedom you give people often, especially when they are being coerced for very cheap amounts of money, we saw this in Ethiopia with the coup, the easier it is for them to cause you problems. So you have to be incredibly wise as a nation that wants to see righteousness, show righteousness. And when you show people righteousness, a lot of times they say terrible things, or they think they can mistake your kindness for weakness. These are complicated subjects. But do I think the United States and China want peace in Ethiopia or in Africa? And we could probably add France in there as well. I would say no, that I cannot say that based on past experiences of watching the intentions, and I would include China on this, that they do have colonial intentions. They are party to people being kicked off their land. They are in somewhat control of whether or not Africans in Sudan will get water. The issue that we are dealing with is one which is somewhat ancient and also incredibly problematic, which is that people who are in these positions are often liars, and you cannot tell what they're lying about, because they will lie about anything. So trusting the Egyptian government, or often the Ethiopian government, even the United States government, this is a big problem. And so a proper investigation and seeing whether or not there's transparency is key. Part of what we do as RUNN is that we are transparent. Part of what we do is also we are democratic. We have a board of directors. We have an infrastructure. We want to make sure that this continues no matter what happens. There's a certain level of not trying to hold on to power, but to share power. The more that we share, the more we have. The more we hold on to what little that we think we have, that's when it starts becoming a war. So there's a long answer, I'm afraid.
Yes, I give thanks. Really is. I asked that question because it's like, all right, His Majesty, he had this same battle with the UN or the League of Nations, and then the UN, for the smaller countries to be recognized as equals, and to be treated as equals. I mean, because if they're ever the United Nations is supposed to actually protect these countries, if ever it's going to do so, honestly, the little countries would need to have some type of equal representation within the league or within the United Nations. So you're continuing that same battle for the poor and have-nots, essentially. So we give thanks that you would take up such a big task, that even His Majesty, he had some successes, but ultimately the United Nations still never really became what its charter says it should be. So give thanks for going on that battlefront, and we wish you all success. If there's anything, any other projects or anything that you have going on that you would like to give a little light while you have this platform, or any works that you would like to share, or any websites or business or anything, just free up, and whatever it is that you want to say, go through, and Yeah, we'll seal up
Give
shortly
thanks,
thereafter.
beloved. Give thanks, beloved. Rastafari. You know, and can't say thank you enough. Yes. So one of the things that I want to say is some of the positives that were not existing in the times in the past. One is the ability to use technology to organize with people. The other one is the fact that we have Africans and people of every nation, multiple places across the earth, including Rastafari. So our ability to network and build in each nation and have communities already established in each nation is unlike any time in history, as well as these nations accepting us as citizens, or as at least, human beings who have, and citizens often. But there's a power. There's a power in using your freedom to speak, your ability to get online, your ability to have a few hours of the day to work on stuff. And this is something that has created a family, as well as a way of you finding what you love and then using it for positive. So I would like to first invite everybody to learn more and to sign up and tell us a little bit about yourselves. And you can do this on reformtheunitednationsnow.com. We also have a Facebook page, which is Reform the United Nations Now Facebook. And actually, I think that one is RUNN, Reform the United Nations Now. So if you just hit RUNN, it will come up. And Reform the United Nations Now is right after that. And what we're looking for are those who care about international peace and realize that they have a platform, just like what Jah Daniel is doing. We're also doing this with our brother Hugo Make Peace on the Imperial Voice radio show. We are working with Fairfield House closely, and we are thankful that they are putting out broadcasts regularly, talking about what we are doing, and also the principles and the importance of reforming the United Nations, and why this specific goal of remove the veto power. We'd also like to thank Ras Koss, who's going to be coming out with an article in INRI magazine. We would like to acknowledge that we have RUNN established in Canada, in Germany, as well as the United States. And what we would like to do is to see RUNN pop up in a whole lot more countries. And so throughout history, it's usually small numbers of people that are able to make big changes. They have to stay focused and realize, who and where are the laws being made, and by whom, and how to create pressure. There's a certain slogan here: the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But I also wanted to give thanks because we're just getting the Instagram page started. So, you can follow what we're up to. And we're got all these different departments. So there's something really for everyone, even if you're like just into making music, or your thing is writing grants, or you're an environmentalist, or you work with Amnesty. It goes on and on. But anybody who understands that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a holy document that needs to be protected, and it's only going to happen through a collective and strong United Nations. Nuclear weapons insult every single law in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's not an accident. His Majesty chanted down nuclear weapons a lot, and there's a reason for it. It's because it is the greatest insult that was ever put on creation, especially when it came to being done 2 months after the opening of the United Nations. So that wasn't a coincidence, and that's also in my book, Mankind's Last Hope, The Urgent Need to Reform the United Nations Now. And you can get it on Amazon or my website, raselijah.com. It's also on the reformtheunitednationsnow.com page as well. So we need to have a lot of letters that go out to a lot of different people. So we spend a lot of time writing letters. We also edit the letters together. We talk about what we think is the proper way. And it's incredible having so many ones study what you're doing. And we create a much more comprehensive and insightful work. So I can't thank the ones that have come forward enough. And that includes Brother Emmanuel, Yue Bantan, Brother Michael. I could go on and on. Like, I'm very thankful. And we need universities, and we're also working on building groups in which young people create them in their universities. So once we have a basic format of what we would like to see a youth group look like, we can send that out to any university student. We're working on flyers, stickers, all kinds of stuff. And there's always something for somebody. If you're interested, please link up. There's no such thing as a stupid question. All of us only know a little bit. And so by putting our heads together, that's how we actually get a lot of stuff done. And there's nothing better than feeling like your work is part of a large group that's actually working together for the interest of the all, without a focus on an individual, but on humanity and our environment, because rapid changes need to happen. I don't want to make people feel bad and get down, but these days are serious. And I do feel that many of us were called in this time to be here to try and make it so that we have a growth of humanity, a evolution in which we realize that war is never an answer.
Yes, I give thanks. You got a lot going on, and that's wonderful. Give thanks for your efforts in every endeavor. The book, we have a copy of it. We give thanks for it. Yeah, and even your artwork is wonderful. And did you say where ones can look for the artwork?
Bless my Lord. Give thanks, my Lord. Give thanks. Yes, you can check the artwork at raselijah.com. It's there. And I am on Facebook. And you'll see me, man. The artwork out there, I know. Ras Elijah Tafari. And we got also a clothing line that's on Chalice Row. And you can see all kinds of cool clothes. And, some of them go to the Word Sound Power Collective, which is a great collective that helps Rastafari elders. And Haile Selassie shirts of him looking down. A portion of those shirts go to those elders. I want to give thanks also for Russ Flacco's guidance through a lot of these subjects. And, it's a joy. We're working with, the Sizzler Foundation as well as Perfect. And, there's a lot of people working together in the clothing realm on this. It's called rootsandcultureshop.com. And Chalice Row is the company that's doing it. So got to give them a quick big up. But that's where you can see the artwork. And before we finish, I would love to say a quote from His Majesty, because we have to let His Majesty guide. Stay focused on the King.
Truly. Yeah. Just for a second, like to highlight the aspect of network. This is the African Liberation Network. Now the Reform the United Nations now is a part of the African Liberation Network. And anybody, any organization, any ones that we interview and share their information, they become part of a network. And now it's like within a network, everybody doesn't do the same thing. Everybody does what they do. And so that way it becomes a fullness, So it's really, we give thanks that you're here because you serve a very important role in African liberation. I mean, the United Nations is a very important organization to have any reform if we really want to see equality and justice in the world at large, even beyond the African continent, So we would just like to take a moment to give thanks that you've been with us. Give thanks for all the information that you've shared. Give thanks for your efforts, your initiative. We encourage ones that are viewing this to go and check the links that you shared and get involved, in whatever ways, as the brethren said, is not just, you don't have to be writing letters. You could be there's a million things that need to be done. So just check it out and see if there's somewhere you can fit in, There might be a space for you in office to fill. So, and I'm sure the strength would be appreciated of. So reach out to the brother and the Reform the United Nations Now. Again, that's the name of the organization, RUNN. And yes, my brother, if you said you wanted to seal up with a quote from His Majesty, and we greatly welcome that. So go through and we'll seal up. Rastafari.
Good thanks and praise. You know, His Majesty is the way that we get guided. And there's not one time where we're not focused on what he's doing. And I just give thanks because His Majesty really laid this out for us. So with that, Holy Emmanuel, King Selassie I, Ja Rastafari. The choice of this age and the very future of humanity is simple. Collective survival or collective extinction. When the stark choice is thus revealed in all its naked horror, dare we hesitate as to our choice? The choice we know, the means we can rediscover in a reinvigorated and mature United Nations, the will to act and the courage and the determination to implement the decisions we must take matter. Let this session be the rebirth of the United Nations and the reaffirmation of our faith in the ever continuity, validity of the purposes and principles for which it was established. A grave responsibility rests upon us to ensure our own collective survival and the future of unborn generations.
Do you have anybody coming over?
May the Almighty grant us the wisdom, courage, and determination to rise to this supreme challenge and reap a rich reward. Emperor Haile Selassie I, Ja Rastafari. The UN address for his 25th anniversary. My Lord. So that would be 1970.
1970, 51 years ago, and we still, still agitating for the same cause. So yeah, give thanks that you would carry it, carry the torch. 5 decades later. Yes, God, give thanks and praise for the I presence again, and give thanks for your efforts. Give thanks for everyone who tuned in to this, great reasoning with Honorable Ras Elijah Tafari. We give thanks for the Reform the United Nations Now organization. And again, we encourage all who are seeing this to go and check it out and see in what way you can support or give us strength. And with that being said, to Ras Elijah, we would say, blessed love, my brother, and give thanks and more strength and prosperity with your works and your endeavors. Yes, and to the viewers, blessed love, give thanks for tuning in. Yes, let this be impactful, let it marinate, let it resonate with you. Do something, do something. This isn't just about talk, this is about action. So again, give thanks to God. Blessed, my Lord.
Hey, good thanks, same way. Likewise, give thanks for what the eye is doing, and may the Most High make you fruitful in his works. Haile Selassie I, Jah be with you, and Jah is with you, my Lord.
Rastafari. And as your work develops, please keep us informed, and you're welcome to use this platform again if ever there's anything that you need to share, in the future to keep us updated,
Good thanks, King. I shall, and bless one and all the viewers and your family, my Lord.